There is a fundamental comfort in being at the top of the food chain. We've spent the last 10,000 years convincing ourselves that we are superior beings because of opposable thumbs and our intelligence. But we tend to overlook one key physiological adaptation that enabled us to survive the frost of the mammoth steppe and the searing heat of the African savanna: sweating. By evaporating water off our skin, we can endure temperatures that would, quite literally, cause a kangaroo or a wolf's body to break down. Our ability to thermoregulate is one of the keys to our survival, but there is a point at which our ability to thermoregulate breaks down, and believe it or not, we're approaching it very quickly. Welcome to the apex exit. Today we're looking at the environmental inflection point humanity is about to hit, and why, once we cross it, no amount of technology can save you. To understand our end, you have to understand how you stay alive right now. Every breath you take, every heartbeat, and every muscle contraction generates thermal waste, and that heat is dangerous to your cells. To prevent your internal organs from hitting the critical failure point of 40 degrees Celsius, the temperature where your cellular machinery begins to melt, your body relies on a fundamental law of physics, the gradient. Heat and moisture always want to move from where there is more to where there is less. Your body is a high-pressure zone of heat and water. The atmosphere usually is a low-pressure zone. When you sweat, you are betting your life that the air is empty enough to soak up that moisture. As the wind carries that sweat away, it takes the heat of your internal struggle with it. This gradient is the only thing keeping your body cool enough to function. But there is a specific measurement that defines the end of that gradient. It's called the wet bulb temperature. Unlike a standard thermometer, a wet bulb reading measures the exact point of atmospheric saturation. It tells us how much moisture, at what specific temperature the air can physically hold before it is full. When the air hits a wet bulb of 35 degrees Celsius, the gradient vanishes. The empty space in the atmosphere is gone. At this threshold, the air cannot hold any more water, and your sweat cannot evaporate. When evaporation stops, the cooling stops. The thermodynamic flow reverses. The air is now the high-pressure zone, and your body becomes the sponge. You begin to soak up the world's heat. You transition from a machine that expels energy to a vessel that accumulates it until your internal systems melt. If this sounds like a distant climate change warning, you're missing the scale of the danger. This has happened before. 252 million years ago, during the end of the Permian period, the Earth hit this threshold. In an event called the Great Dying, global temperatures spiked with such ferocity that biology simply hit its ceiling. As habitable zones evaporated, large-bodied animals were unable to outrun a changing atmosphere. Even the Gorgonopsids, the ultimate apex killers of the late Permian, found their power meant nothing against an environment that refused to accept their heat. During the Great Dying, average temperatures reached 35 degrees Celsius, turning the world into an apocalyptic wasteland where the thermodynamics of life stopped working. But while the Permian monsters had millions of years to slide into oblivion, we are recreating these conditions in mere decades. In places like the Persian Gulf and the Indus Valley, we aren't just approaching humanity's wet bulb limit. We are touching it. Imagine you are standing in a city where the wet bulb temperature has just crossed 35 degrees. At first you feel nothing but a heavy, suffocating stillness. But inside your hypothalamus, the thermostat of your brain is screaming. It triggers a biological panic. To save your core, your heart begins to pump blood at a frantic pace, trying to push heat toward your skin. In a standard heat wave, this works. But here the air is full. There is no room for your heat. Your heart is now a pump working against a closed valve. Your pulse climbs to 130, then 150, while you are simply standing still. As your core temperature climbs past 40 degrees Celsius, your proteins, the literal building blocks of your life, undergo a process called denaturation. Think of a clear raw egg. When you add heat, the proteins unfold and tangle, turning white and solid. Inside your body, the same thing is happening to your enzyme. The first to feel it is the gut. The lining of your intestines becomes leaky, allowing bacteria and toxins to spill directly into your bloodstream. Finally, your brain begins to swell. This is cerebral edema. As your internal pressure rises, your personality dissolves. You become confused. We like to think of our intelligence as our shield, but the brain is the most temperature-sensitive organ we possess. As such, when your body is exposed to a prolonged wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees or more, and your systems break down, your brain is no longer able to function, leading to a painful and certain death. So, in the face of rising global temperatures, we turn to technology. Air conditioning is perhaps the most significant mortality-defying invention in human history. It has allowed us to settle in deserts and swamps that, for the previous 200,000 years, were effectively human-free zones. But there is a dark irony to this mechanical savior. An air conditioner does not destroy heat, it simply moves it from the inside of a room to the outside. In a massive urban center, this creates what climatologists call a heat island. During a wet bulb event, the thousands of AC units pumping heat into the streets can raise the local outdoor temperature by an additional 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. We are quite literally cooling our bedrooms by setting our streets on fire. This creates a state of technological incarceration. In the late Cretaceous, the Mosasaurus was the undisputed king of the seaway until the environment changed too fast for its specialized body to keep up. We have become just as specialized. Millions of people now live in environments where, if the power grid fails for even 24 hours during a heat event, the survival rate drops to near zero. We have built cities that are essentially life support systems. If the plug is pulled by a solar flare, a cyber attack, or simply a grid overload, those cities transform from shelters into ovens. In fact, global heat-related deaths have been climbing over the last 30 years, and are now double compared to 1980. Humanity is creating our very own great dying, and it's getting worse year over year. We often look at the Permian extinction, or the fall of the Western Interior Seaway, as ancient history, a series of unfortunate events that happened to less advanced creatures. But the planet doesn't care about advancement, it only cares about equilibrium. The Gorgonopsids were the absolute peak of their era, equipped with tools that made them untouchable. The mosasaur was a biological masterpiece that reigned for 30 million years. They didn't vanish because they were weak. They vanished because the window of conditions they were built for simply slammed shut. We are currently testing that same window. The universe wasn't built to keep you alive. It is a vast, indifferent machine that has already erased 99% of everything that has ever lived. We are the first species that can actually see the filter coming, yet we are the only species that continues to walk toward it. You aren't the master of the Earth. You are a biological organism with a thermal limit, living in a world that is becoming increasingly unbreathable. The question isn't if the apex exit will happen. The question is, when the power goes out and the sweat stops working, what will you be? Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember that you are only as permanent as the air around you.